Okay, right. We had a distraction there, it's okay. What we're going to do now is I'm going to get you to set up that buffing machine for me with one of those pads. So firstly I'll get you to set it up with this pad here for me. Have we got that nut still in there? The nut's gone, so we need to put that nut on before we start. Yep. Okay, don't over tighten. It'll never come back off. Alright, and this pad here, thanks mate. Yep. Shoot the clean side facing outwards. Yep. The advantage of having these buffs here is you get two sides to your pad, which means you can either use one side for coarse cut, one for fine cut, or you can have two goes at it before you've got to clean your pad up. That's the disadvantage in these ones here. You can only use it one-sided, and that's it, you've got to take it off and go for a clean. Oh yeah, that's well set up, but we've got a safety issue here. That handle needs to be tight. That's an Allen key, we need to do that. But we'll take you through that process later. What I want to talk to you about now is techniques of buffing, right? So we've got these two different compounds here. The coarse cut, we'll go through the coarse cut first, right? Now the coarse cut will take out 800 grit scratches. However, if you've only sanded the 800 grit, there's a chance that in between some of those 800 grit scratches, you're still going to have some 600 grit scratches or some 400 grit scratches. If you sand to 1200 grit, the chances of you still having 600 grit scratches in there is minimal. Any residual scratches in there are only probably going to be 800 grit scratches, which this will take out anyway. So the idea is you go to a 1200 grit sanding, you start with your coarse grit or your heavy grit. And the way I like to approach the buffing with that is make sure that you've got a good amount on there, right? And then we start slow, start on level 1. What I like to do is just spread it around, and you can get a spray bottle full of water and just put some mist on there, spread it around, make sure you've got a nice moist surface on it. And when you're on that low speed, you start turning it up and putting a bit more pressure on it. You only still want to be on about number 2 or 3 at this point. And just make sure you get everywhere. Put a bit of pressure on one side of the pad and just make sure you spread it all the way around. Now what you want to do after that, make sure it's moist still, you know, the spray, but you turn it up, you want to go a bit higher speed. And this time you're backing off the pressure, you're giving it a polish this time, you're allowing, that first cut has already been established. Now you're allowing the particles to just run over those deep cuts and take those out with smaller cuts. So you're polishing lightly at that point. If we're going to do a corner, can you think of something might go wrong in a corner?
Knock it off.
Yeah, that middle nut there is a killer on corners. If you're using the middle of your buff pad and you hit a corner, you're going to destroy it. So make sure, especially corners and edges, we want to make sure we use the meaty part of the buff pad there. And if you can avoid it, don't use it that way. It's going to spin clockwise and it's going to throw that buffing compound all over you. If you can, use the other side and turn it around. Approach it from that way and you're spinning the buffing compound away from you. It just makes it a lot more pleasant experience. With the fine cut, slightly different process. The fine cut we don't push hard with the fine cut. Again, we like to put it on there I like to put a bit on my hand and spread it on the pad as well. Keep it nice and moist. And you want a second pad. There's no point putting a fine cut compound on a pad that you've just had the coarse cut compound on. So I get a second pad. What we do then, again, start on the slow speed, work it in, have a bit of a spray, work it in again, slightly up the speed and lower the pressure at the same time. So by the time you've finished, it should be shining up, and all that buffing compound should be sticking to your pad and coming off the job, leaving a nice shiny finish. Sometimes you end up with a milky finish on there. Just get a clean rag, make sure it's clean, and give it a rub. Sometimes you find it's just a bit of buffing compound that's left on there, and you're going to have to use a little bit less compound the next time you go about. So you're always going to have to change the way you do things based on what's happening on the job. Now with the speed of the buff and the pressure of the buff, can you think of anything that might happen if I go too fast or push too hard?
Dangerous?
It's not only dangerous, you can lose control of the job. Sometimes your job can fly off the bench. Lots of times if we're doing something that's tricky or hard to get to, we'll make sure we clamp it to the bench. If we're working on this one here, there's a good chance it's going to rock around. We'll make sure we get some clamps in there before we buff it. So that way we're keeping ourselves safe, we're keeping the product safe, and that way we're keeping the company safe. Right. Another thing that can happen, if you push down on that buff, you'll heat up that glass. There's a lot of friction going on there. And when that glass heats up, a number of things can happen. You can have a repair job that's underneath that's got a lot of powder or fillers in the bottom. That becomes really brittle when that happens. It can start cracking. Sometimes the bottom will also shrink when it's a filler, when it heats up, and you end up with a horrible dent where your repair used to be. Another thing that can happen is discoloration and burning of the gel coat. So that's another reason to keep spraying and lubricating too, and keep your pressure low. Is you're going to burn that gel coat, it all needs repairing after that. And when you're buffing, you're already at the end of your repair, so you don't want to go back to the start. The third thing that can happen is if you've got air voids in there, if you've got a dry tire layer, or if you've got any air bubbles in your first laminates, when you're buffing and heats it up, the air will expand in there and make a bubble. It'll come up, it'll either crack, or it'll sink back down and leave a void. Either way, you're going to ruin your finish. So try and keep your speeds and your pressures so you're not heating that product up. Alright. What we're going to do now is we'll just go off and we'll do a quick tidy up, put some tools away, and we'll make sure that we blow out all of the vents on all of these, wash out our buff pads and hang them up for the next day, and put everything away. Alright, thanks a lot.